the vagaries of an impermanent entropic universe. It just means you were going to be able to navigate this with a little bit more ease.
So a couple of points there that I found really powerful. So that image of the snow globe, we can find those practices that help us to settle our mind and bring in those attitudes of kindness and curiosity. We're actually able to generate more happiness in our immediate moment-to-moment experience because we are more present. So there's the cultivation of happiness here. Dan Harris also kind of alludes to the science. We want to go in a little bit more deeply to the science and a lot of the compelling evidence that's showing how impactful regular mindfulness practice is. And something that also struck me was we think about the past and how right now we live in a society where going to the gym is thought of as this really healthy thing that people do. And we didn't used to need the gym because we were working in the fields and we were using our bodies all day. We weren't sitting at desks. We weren't sitting at computers. So we created the gym as a place to go and get the exercise that we know that we need. Now we're in this digital age where there's so much, we're wired in, we're plugged in, we've got dings and bings and all kinds of things happening. And we need those spaces and tools to be able to attend to our minds, and give our minds this sort of psychic rest and reset, and help with that overwhelm. So it really is about how we're evolving and how society is changing. So there has been an explosion of research publications in the field of neuroscience, and a lot of neuroscientists wanting to understand how the brain works. So we've learned a lot about how the brain works in recent years, and also what the impact of regular mindfulness practice is on the brain. So we want to share a little bit of that. One of the really significant findings that has really it wasn't that long ago that we discovered this, was neuroplasticity. We used to think that we were born with a certain amount of brain cells, and as we died, we would just kind of slowly lose more and more, and that was the end. We know now that that is not true. We know that the brain actually changes itself. Both the structure and the function of the brain changes depending on what we are doing and what we are paying attention to. So we can literally grow new pathways in the brain, and certain chains of neurons get strengthened when they're used a lot and become weakened when they're used less. So we can actually build new capacities through developing new habits. The brain is malleable. So just like when we go to the gym and we're kind of doing those bicep curls and our muscle grows, it's the same with our brain. What we tend to do habitually is where we are strong. So we can shift habits. There's a couple studies that we wanted to share, and one relates to, this was done by Judson Brewer, who's a leading neuroscientist, and what he was doing was looking at two groups of people. One group was a group of people who were consistent meditators, and another group who were naive to meditation, had never really done any meditation. He put them both into fMRI scans, so this is where the activity of the brain, you can kind of look at it live in real time. And he saw that when the meditators were meditating, that default mode network got hugely deactivated. And the default mode is the mode that we tend to be in by default. It's when we're in that space of rumination, thinking about the past, thinking about the future. It's all that kind of self-referential thinking that we all do all the time. So it's that self-referential default mode. So he noticed that when the meditators were meditating, that the default mode network became inactive. But he also noticed that when both groups were just sitting in the MRI scan, waiting for the scan, that the meditator group had a less active default mode even when they weren't meditating. So really what this says is that consistent practice of focusing our attention and kind of letting that, not giving into the default mode, actually means that we carry that through in our lives, and we can be more present and less caught up in self-referential thinking throughout our days. There was another really significant study, and this one I honestly don't know how they got people to participate in this. I certainly wouldn't have wanted to participate in this one. Again, they had a group of people who had meditated consistently for 10 years, so very experienced meditators, and a group of people who had never meditated or were very, very new to meditation. They put both groups of people, again, into these fMRI scans. And for this experiment, somebody came along, and you didn't know when they were going to come, and applied a burning hot probe to the forearm of the person lying in the fMRI scan. So again, I don't know how they got people to sign up for this. It didn't burn the skin, but it was kind of, just shy of burning. Not fun, not a pleasant experience. But what they wanted to see was, they wanted to look at the amygdala. So the amygdala is that part of our brain that's kind of our alarm system. It lets us know that there's threat, and it can trigger the fight-flight response. So they wanted to see between the two groups what the amygdala activation was, and also the recovery, how long it took to recover from this kind of unpleasant stimulus. And what they discovered, which was fascinating, was that both groups registered the pain equally. Both groups, 7 out of 10. It was a 7 out of 10, for example. They both felt the pain, but the meditator group had less anticipatory activation. They weren't lying there anticipating it, feeling stressed, amygdala activated, and after the probe was applied, they recovered more quickly. So their brain kind of came back to an equilibrium state more quickly, whereas the other group was more activated and it took longer for them to recover. So this gives us some insight into recovering from setbacks in general, anticipating things in the future, all the kind of anxiety that can come with those things, and really shows that there really was a significant difference in these two groups based on practice. So this takes practice. Also, for those of you who are kind of scientists in the room or social scientists, there was a meta-analysis done. So a meta-analysis is sort of looking at all of the literature and distilling down what are those key things that seem to be consistent across all of these different sources. And this was done by Dr. Tang at the Texas Technological Neuroimaging Institute, and really summarized that from all the research that's available, there's these 3 key areas that seem to be most impacted by consistent meditation practice: attentional control, being able to focus, having that skill of focus, emotional regulation, and an increase in self-awareness. So we know from the research, even though the research is new, it's, we're still in kind of early days with the research, but we know these things to be very well supported in evidence. And then also some good news here. This is actually a couple of results from people who participated in this very program. And these are results spanning 15 countries. And these are results from a post-survey that is delivered, and I believe will also be delivered to you 4 weeks after participating in the program. And a couple of things here that relate very much to leadership. So you can see a post-program increase to the statement, when in conflict with someone, I take time to fully understand what is driving their perspective. We're going to be talking about conflict on Friday and difficult conversations. And then over here, I'm able to pause before reacting. So a pretty significant piece here, and this comes back to Viktor Frankl's quote, finding that space between stimulus and response. Very, very powerful leadership skill. So that's sort of some of the science here. We will be introducing a number of practices we've already begun over these 2 days. And there's 2 kinds of practices that we're really going to be talking about. So there's integrated practice, which are small in-the-moment practices, and dedicated practices. And the analogy here